Alrighty guys, so we're back with another video log of my Super Cub build. Today we're going to be working on the other vertical stabilizer. So I welded up some of the one for the other side in the last video, so we're going to be finishing jigging up the one for the other side and tack welding it in this video. So I'll show you basically what the last bit of fabrication I have to do. So I think I mentioned in the last video, for the most part, this tubing kit comes pre-bent and pre-cut. The first scenario where I had to basically do any kind of metal fabrication is this one. So I'll show you that. Okay, so you can see here that this leading edge of the stabilizer extends maybe like 6 inches, 5 inches longer than it really needs to be. So basically you would cut this pipe right here along this edge and then you would weld this to it. But that means that you're going to be welding something that's like maybe like an inch and a quarter in diameter, and the air will be flowing off this leading edge onto the elevator, which also kind of goes right here. There's a small gap between the stabilizer and where the front of the elevator comes in. So the elevator is only maybe like 3/8 of an inch thick. So if you can imagine, the air would be flowing this way off of this leading edge, which is an inch and a quarter, onto the leading edge of the elevator, which is like 3/8 of an inch. So the guy who built the tubing kit gives you the option of which end rib you want to use here. So this one here, you can see, is very narrow to match that 3/8 of an inch thick leading edge of the elevator. So you can see it goes from narrow and then all the way back to this like 1 inch in diameter. So he gives you this rib, and then he also gives you this rib. So if you compare these two ribs, they're the same, basically the same diameter in the back, but this other rib here is full diameter. So you could just cut this pipe here, and you could go with this rib and just weld it up, and it'd be really simple. But for me, I want to blend those two widths. So basically what I'm doing is I've drawn a line here about 1/4 of an inch away from where I need to do the final cut. So I'll do a rough cut here and just cut this excess off. And then I'm going to go back about 6 or 7 inches and mark a line. And then I'll take this and I'll put it in my vise and I'll squeeze it down. So I'll taper it down from the full diameter down to that diameter there. And I'll just go back and forth between my jig and this rib, basically my jig and the vise here, and then I'll just keep working it until I get it right. So once I get it squished down enough, then I'll do the final cut. I'll just grind off the excess with like my bench grinder to get it real nice and smooth. And then I'll just keep fitting it up until it's perfect. So I'll kind of show you that process. It's a pretty simple way to do it, but it works really well. That's what I did for the other side, and seemed to work pretty well. So I'll show you that. Alright, now I'm over at the vise and I'll show you how I bend these down. So I start with sticking the vise or the tube all the way in to about where I want to start the bend. And you can see I'm sticking these wood 2x4s in here. That's because I don't want the vise basically to put a hard line in this tube where it's bending it. And I'm also sticking these blocks out the side a good amount, and that's because when the vise comes together it will kind of naturally put more pressure or less pressure out here because it's, you know, pushing over here. So basically what these blocks will do is end up going kind of like that naturally, which helps so you don't get a hard line right here, you know, on this tube where the edges are. And I'm just getting this so it's twisted right, so it bends, you know, flat and not like that or that. I want that bend line, you know, the crease or whatever where the tube bends in half to be right down the middle of the leading edge. So here you just give it an initial bend. It doesn't have to be a lot. I may have to, it looks like my 2x4 is cracking. I have to get another one. Put my safety glasses on. You can kind of see it bending down there a little bit, and that's what we want. So I don't know how well you can see that, but we've got an initial bend there now. I'm going to use maybe the other side. I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter, but stick this in here again. Maybe just a little closer now to the end. And you want to try to get this tube in line with, you know, where this metal is pressing on these boards. Maybe something like that. See, you can see what I'm saying, where these 2x4s naturally want to go like that because I have this end sticking out of the vise more, which is exactly what we want. There you can see more of the natural, I don't know if you can see that, you can see more of it kind of just naturally tapering down. Try this a couple more times. I want to get the bend, or I want to get the taper started farther out here, so I have to go farther in here to start with. farther like that. Need a 2x4. Those 2x4 can't take the pressure, so try this one. Maybe this one's made out of better wood. We'll find out. I might fast forward you through this because it's not super entertaining, but it is somewhat informative how I do this. Okay. There you can see the hole. Basically from here on in, it's starting to taper. So now I'll go maybe inch and a half at a time, and move my way up this tube and crush it a little bit farther at each point, so that when it gets all the way to the end, it's crushed, all the way down. So here I was about there, so now I'll go into about here and crush it there. Okay, now I'll pull it out to about there. Crush it there. Alright, so now you can see I've crushed it down just about to where it needs to be. So now I'll be putting it back in the jig, marking the location for the final cut, and then putting that into a bench grinder and grinding it down to the final cut. And then at that point, I can jig it up and just do a couple more final fitments and little readjustments if I need to. Yeah, then that part's ready to weld. So these ribs are cut on the end so that they're kind of like a C shape, the way they wrap around the tubes here. So one thing I learned, or I tried this time, was I was getting the fitment, where the tube comes in like this. It was fitting here fine, but as you can see, there was kind of a gap here where this cut C-shaped cup wasn't cupping around the tube, perfectly. There was just a little gap. So what I tried is taking like my crescent wrench and clamping on here and bending this out just a tiny bit on each side like that. And that seemed to actually help a little bit. The gaps where they, meet the tubes just about went away completely. And yeah, so I got that fitting you know, perfectly. So the next thing I'll do is mark with my red Sharpie. I'll mark about an inch on each side of where the welding points will be on the tubes. And then I'll go ahead and take those to my Scotch-Brite wheel and I'll clean those. I'll clean the metal so it's shiny and bright and ready to weld. And then I'll put it back in my jig. I guess there's one more step I usually do after I clean it with the Scotch-Brite wheel is I'll take acetone and a rag and I'll wipe it down one more time. And you do that just to get like any oily residue from your fingers or whatever you've been touching, whatever the metal may have touched. Any dust, anything, any of those things can contaminate your weld. So you want to just get it super clean. Alrighty guys, so I guess I'll just leave it there for today's video log. I think that's about as far as I'm going to make it tonight. But as you can see, I got most of the parts. Basically, I got this part here, the end cut, bent. I got most of the parts cleaned where the welds are going to be. I got each of the ribs, the ends, basically bent out just a little bit so they fit tighter. And yeah, it's basically ready to clean with the acetone, put in the jig one last time, and then tack weld it. So pretty exciting. I'll be tack welding it in the next video, and then I think I'll be starting to build my second table so that I'll have another 10 feet that way, and I'll be able to do the fuselage. I think I'm going to forego doing the elevators and just go straight to the fuselage. Mostly because I want to see the fuselage take shape. And I have some friends that kind of want to help out. So, and I know they're excited. And I don't think there's a lot for them. There'd be a lot for them to do if they want to. If I do the elevator next. So I'm gonna have them probably help me with the build table, and should be pretty exciting in the next video. So stay tuned. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you find these videos interesting. Thanks guys. See you next time.